to the latest episode of my knitting and creative podcast. My name on Instagram is Orchids Heart and I'm based in Birmingham in England. I am filming a slightly different episode today. If you're here for the knitting, this one's not going to be about knitting. It's going to be about cosy autumn sewing plans, some ideas, thinking through some thoughts, looking at projects that I've already made or started and how I'm going to finish them or make them better. And I think I shared like some clips of another craft I was doing earlier in the month, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing with that as well. Yes, so if I'm honest, my sewing mojo has been non-existent. I haven't sewn a garment in a really long time. Sewing was definitely my first passion before knitting. I've been sewing for 16 years. I learned when I was 15. I mean, no, that's a lie. I've been sewing pretty much my entire life. Obviously, as a small child, I wasn't, but I have memories of being 8 years old trying to make clothes for my Barbies. So I think, you know, I've been sewing pretty much forever. Sewing is a big part of my family. My grandmother, as I suspect most grandmothers probably did, of my age, worked in a factory sewing things, but she was kind of known for whipping up a dress for going out that night in her lunch break. It's like a half an hour smock dress kind of thing. So I've always been around people sewing. Knitting wasn't so prevalent in family life for me, so I think it took me a bit longer to get to grips with it. But sewing very much, I've pretty much always done. I really got into it at college, and I've been making my own clothes seriously since I was about 25, but unofficially pretty much forever. I used to get things from the charity shop and like tweak them and things like that. So that's a bit of a background. But yeah, so I'm not really feeling the sewing at the moment. I think when I first came back to Birmingham, my friend told me that was about 6 years ago or 5.5 years ago the other day. I was quite shocked. Didn't realise I'd been in England that long. I started really getting into it because I had the space. I moved in with my partner, so I had the space and the time to think about like really focusing, whereas before I was kind of flat hopping in Paris, which made it very difficult to have all the equipment and space that you need. It's not possible, because I was moving all the time. I didn't want to acquire too many things. So in the last 5 years, 6 years, I really got into it, and I think maybe my skill level kind of plateaued a bit. Or to be honest, I've made enough clothes that I do actually wear, and I've got some things I don't really wear, and so my wardrobe is kind of full of these things that I've made, some of which I love and I wear a lot, and some of which I don't wear as much, but because I've made them, I don't want to just get rid of them, because they're all made in such lovely fabrics, like a lot of it Merchant Mills and things like that, and maybe I wasn't so smart about the shapes I was making, or you know, they just weren't really for me, etc. So, and you know, sometimes I've tried to sell these pieces on because, you know, they're handmade. I put a lot of time and energy into them. But if I'm honest, that's not really something that's ever really worked out for me. So, but if you are interested, I do have some pieces that I've not worn at all really on my kofi. So you can have a look if you're interested and you're a similar size to me. But whilst we're talking about sewing in garments, I am actually wearing a skirt that I made quite early on in my making my own clothes, and it is something that I wear a lot and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to see if I can show you. And it's very autumnal as well. I don't know how much of this you can see. If you can't see it at all, I'll stick in a photo or something. And so this is the Arielle Skirt pattern by Tilly and the Buttons. I think when I first started making my own clothes, I was quite captivated by Tilly and the Buttons because the patterns are quite simple and explanatory, but I would say on the whole the shapes aren't really me, except from this one. I love this. I made this from a remnant of like some really lovely warm toned wool that I bought for not very much money, and it's got like a green check on it, and I used random vintage green buttons from my grandmother's stash. And it's like a wrap skirt, so it's like a rectangle, but it's made up of panels with darts to give it shape, and it's very high-waisted. And I really like it because the colour is just spot on for me. It goes actually with a lot of things. But because of the buttons, I can actually unbutton the bottom few buttons and then still wear it on my bike to work, which is really useful. I can get to work and then do the buttons up, and then it looks really smart. Most pencil skirts I obviously can't wear on my bike. It's a shame. I have one I really like that I thrifted, but I never wear it because I bike to work, and it's just, I just can't move my legs enough to pedal. But this is really good, and it looks really smart. And the fabric's like really good. It's not worn at all, and I've lived in it, so I do recommend this one. But that's not what you're here for. Sorry, my eye. We're here to talk about upcoming projects. Oh, and the jumper I'm wearing is the Tulip pullover by Melody Hoffman in Plutulopi and an unknown mohair. My eyes. Oh, anyone else get that when you just put mascara on? Your eyelashes feel not right. So I'm going to start with a project that I unearthed yesterday that I was vaguely aware of, but in my memory it was worse than when I picked it back up and had a look at it yesterday. So I was on a bit of a learning how to quilt and patchwork kick this year. I am not an expert. I have no idea what I'm doing. Everything I make is incredibly wonky, including this. But I did make a quilt, which I am going to share a video about at some point. But I don't know what or how that's going to be useful to anybody. So I'm still thinking about that. But I made some like blocks. I was experimenting with shapes and like using scraps and offcuts. And I had this stamped panel by the artist I don't know her name. Her Instagram handle's Wool in Nature. I bought a project bag from her, and she sent me like a stamped patch at the same time, which is this one. And I had all these like different fabrics in these colours. These are left over from clothes I've made. And I made this with the view of it being a project bag. But I fell out in love with it because I thought that the stuff the wadding I'd put in between was too thick, and it was going to be like too substantial. When I picked it up the other day, I actually don't think, once I've done some hand quilting into it, like, you know, bash it down a bit, compress it, I think it will be okay. I mean, it will be quite thick. What it was, I get these veg boxes, and sometimes they send them with wadding in, although actually this might have been my brief experience with HelloFresh, because this one feels synthetic, whereas the veg boxes tend to send like the cheap offcut, well, not offcuts, but the cheap fleece wadding. Like, they can't sell it for wool because they don't make enough money, because the industry is like crazy. And so they use it to make, like, I think, compost and insulation and things like that, and it stinks and it's not very good quality. But I think that's why I didn't use it, because it was really stinky. And so this is definitely a synthetic one, but it was double the thickness, and I kind of pulled it apart, and I think I decided it was still too thick, and I was really annoyed that I didn't wait until I'd done my quilt and used an offcut of that wool wadding that I bought, because it feels much nicer. But being that I've already stitched into this on the machine, I mean, the stitches are tiny. I don't think you're even going to see them. There's no going back. And I think that's why I abandoned it. So I am going to continue. I am going to do some hand stitching on it, a bit like, forgive me, I'm going to grab something. I'd made this. It's a cover for my sewing machine a few months ago. And this is also some of the experimental blocks that I made. And I was trying different ways of quilting into it to decide how I was going to do the quilting on my actual quilt. And also so that I had a test sample to put through the wash to see what would happen to the stamped panels I'd bought and how the wadding would react once I washed it. Would it like shrink up and make everything all crinkly in a nice way? Would it all distort and look terrible? And it came out really nicely, so I turned it into a cover for my sewing machine. So I think I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to hand quilt on, you know, some lines and maybe some cross hatching, some bits and bobs. So I'm going to do that. That might be something I start soon because it feels not so scary, and then I'll turn it into a project bag at some point. So that's something I'm going to do. So it's using a lot of Tencel twill, linen and seersucker offcuts from Merchant Mills for my clothes, because I can't bear to throw any scraps out. And then the next project that I have been thinking about for a really long time and keep putting off, because what I want to do to it is quite, well, it's not something I've done before, so I feel a bit nervous. So I've had this quilted jacket pattern, and hopefully I'll remember to put a picture up of it, for quite a while. When I bought the pattern, it had a different name. It was called the Howery pattern, and it got renamed to the unfolding jacket because it was decided that Howery was cultural appropriation and not okay. A Howery is a traditional Japanese garment. I don't believe you'd class it as a jacket. I did actually have some as a child because I was born in Tokyo and a Japanese friend gave them to us. And I think they're quite special items of clothing. Sadly, I don't have them anymore. So the name I have written on my pattern is the name that it had when I bought it. It is the Howery, but it was renamed Unfolding, but I think it's now been completely discontinued. The shape of the jacket, which hopefully you've seen, looks nothing like a Howery. I'm not really sure why they called it that. It's just a quilted jacket. So I don't feel bad making it because it's not a Howery and I'm not going to call it that. But if you're looking on Instagram, that's where most of the past projects are. But I want to make that shape, and I saw one on Instagram, and hopefully I'll stick a picture in of that as well, where it looked like it had moon phases on the back quilted on. So I really want to do that. But the idea of quilting like circular shapes and drafting those shapes, I feel a bit nervous about. And I don't know, like, it's, what fabric do I buy to do the moons in? Do I already have something? How do I quilt and applique circular shapes? Because I think the way she's done it is she's pieced the pieces together. I want to just applique it onto the back panel because that seems easier, but maybe it's not. I also had the idea of embroidering like some stars and things onto it, but on the other side because it's a reversible pattern. So I have lots of ideas, but they're all things I don't really know how to do. So I have this lovely quilted jacquard fabric from Merchant Mills, which a lot of people have used to make that jacket pattern. It's got quite some weight to it. I bought it secondhand on eBay and it had like a faded mark on it. And then I tried to dye it dark grey because blue isn't really a colour I wear. But I think I have some in the original colour here. I did. This is odd. Ah, I can see it. Hold on. So this is the colour it was originally, and then I tried to dye it grey and it became this colour. So, I mean, I do prefer this colour to this colour, but it does seem a bit pointless. So it hasn't gone grey. I did consider trying to dye it grey again, but I've decided just to embrace the colour. Obviously the world was telling me if you're going to do a night sky themed jacket that you shouldn't do it grey, you should do it blue. It's just, this isn't a colour I wear very often. I think I wear a lot more sort of browns and things, and I don't think this will go with brown. I just think I have to be a bit more mindful about when and how I wear it. But this fabric is beautifully soft. I'm really looking forward to having it. I have enough wool wadding left over from my quilt as well to cut out to put in between. So I need to buy some kind of fabric to do the lining or the other side with it. And I kind of thought that maybe I would do the moon phase on this side, just on the back, and then the lining side I would probably do the kind of star embroidery maybe. But I'm not sure. I don't know whether it's really ambitious doing both and whether I should pick one or the other and then do a more basic lining so that I can have a jazzy coat and then a less jazzy coat. Or whether I ought to just go for it and have two jazzy sides, I really don't know. So I'm massively putting that off. Sewing the actual jacket will be really easy. It's a very basic construction. So that's not a problem. I have the pattern, I have one piece of, you know, the most expensive fabric component, and I have wadding, which I don't need because this is quite thick and already quite quilted, but I want it to be warm and cosy, so, you know. I should really start doing some embroidery samples and applique samples and just have a go, but I kind of feel like it's quite a big project, but I'm sure once I get going, it's probably not. I don't know. Send thoughts if you have any. So yes, that's kind of one big daunting thing I'm putting off. The other project, is that another daunting project? No. This is something that I think will be quite straightforward. So I made this Hinterland dress out of a wool fabric. You have to forgive me, it's looking really scrunched because it's been shoved in a cupboard. So this is like a wool fabric, and I probably made it about 2 years ago, and I made it with short sleeves and a shorter skirt, but it's too short. I don't like the dimensions, and so I have decided, and I don't know why I made it so short, like it's the shortest one I've ever made. I don't know why I did it. At the time, I think I did it thinking I could make something else with the fabric, but that was a mistake. So I know that with, I think like historically, dresses, people used to make them longer and then like pin tuck the skirts up so that they could be let down as the child grew. So I've got more of the fabric. Well, I still have this left over. I've not used it to make anything else like I thought I would. So I think I'm going to cut some rectangular pieces and do like mock pin tucks, so that I can elongate the skirt by maybe this much. So I might need to do 2 to make it look like it was on purpose. So like I'll make a longer bit, I will put an actual pin tuck. Probably it's not a pin tuck, probably it's something else. But I will do one, and then the hem will look like another. So hopefully it'll look like it was on purpose, and then I can add some length to it. And then hopefully I'll wear it more. The other thing is it wasn't the same colour when it arrived and I thought it was. It's like kind of quite green. For some reason I thought it was brown. So yeah, and then I think it'll be a lot more wearable. It's got pockets. It's got a really nice label situation because I really like making the insides look nice. So yeah. That's something I'm going to do, and that might be something I do sooner than later because it seems less overwhelming than some of the other projects. And then really, like, I have some pieces of fabric that I don't know what to do with, so I thought I'd maybe ask you guys if you had any thoughts. I have this quite big remnant from a dress I made. So I feel like there's definitely enough there to make some kind of top. So I made a Hinterland dress out of this. And it's some check linen from Merchant at Mills. And so I do wonder if there's enough there to make a short sleeve shirt. Is that being optimistic? Or some kind of top. I don't really want to make any more sleeveless tops because I have loads and because this is quite an autumnal fabric. So, sorry, it sounds like the child next door fell down the stairs. There was a bit of a scream. I don't know if you heard. Poor kid, I hope they're okay. Sounds like they are. So I don't really know, but if you have any ideas, please do share. I then have a really big piece of this mystery fabric. It could be like a wool blend, I'm not really sure, and it's quite heavy feeling. So I did think about doing a 3/4 sleeve button down front Hinterland dress. But I kind of have this feeling this fabric won't wear very well. So I'm not sure. I feel like it might bobble very easily. I'm also not totally in love with the colour. So I did think I might try and dye it and make it a bit richer. And then make the dress. I'm not sure. But that would be something I would wear. I did make a Hinterland dress out of a similar colour Atelier Brunette viscose. And I absolutely adored it, but it wore really badly. Like, I've not had a good experience with that fabric. From talking to friends, it sounds like other Atelier Brunette fabrics are better, but I didn't really find the viscose held up. I wonder if maybe the reason why I love linen so much is because it does age much better than viscose. And I'm not really into making clothes that aren't going to last a fair while. So I've kind of moved away from using viscose because nothing I've made from viscose has particularly aged that great. So, and then the last thing I have fabric wise is I have a metre of this Merchant Mills linen. It was a remnant that I bought. And again, I don't really know what to make with it. I wonder about making a short sleeve shirt with it. I don't know if I've got enough. I also don't really know what pattern I'm going to make from it. I did think about the So Liberated newest pattern. I'll try and put a picture here, but I think the neck might be quite low and I don't know if that's for me or not. I think I prefer something that I could button up to the top so that I could put a jumper over the top if I wanted. I also thought if I have any leftover wool fabric from this, I might make myself a waistcoat. I've been watching, really sorry, her name I'm pretty sure is Lorna, but her handle, her Instagram name, fibre something. I'll put a thing either in the notes below or on the screen. She makes a lot of waistcoats. I'm actually quite inspired. I used to wear waistcoats a lot when I was a student. I used to wear quite high-waisted short shorts, leggings, like a top, a shirt, a waistcoat on top, like quite a lot of layers. And I kind of fell out of the habit of wearing waistcoats. So maybe I'll make myself one. I feel like that could be quite a nice thing to make with not very much fabric. And I think this fabric would suit that well. And then the last thing that I'm thinking I might make this autumn, I'm going to be honest, this isn't like an autumn sewing plan. This is probably going to take me until spring because this is quite a lot for the rate in which I've been creating at the moment. I've really not been doing very much sewing. There is a time where I probably could have got through most of these projects in a month, but I just don't think my heart's really in it at the moment. But something I did make last year, actually it was earlier this year when I was in a bit of a sewing funk, and it brought me so much joy, is this patchwork hot water bottle cover. So I was a patron for Addie Best last year because I really wanted to collect some of her linen stamped patches for making my quilt, and I have some left. This winter I'd quite like to make some patchwork Christmas stockings, I think. And I used this one to make a hot water bottle cover. So this is again using leftovers from my clothes. I had some quite big leftover pieces of the yellow, and I didn't really want to just use it for pockets because I just love this fabric. It makes me so happy. I love the way linen feels. And again, I used some leftovers from the wadding from the quilt I made, so it's got like wool wadding in it. I used a contrast colour for the inside of the neck, but the neck only. The inside of the rest of it, if I can prise these poppers apart, it's just quite a plain taupe coloured linen that I care less about seeing. I don't need to ever really undo it because I just fit it up at the neck, but if I ever did need to wash it, I would be able to get it out here. And this is poppers, not buttonholes, because I couldn't be bothered to do buttonholes. I was lazy. Buttonholes would obviously be maybe a bit prettier. But I would like to make another 1 or 2 of these. I have this little hot water bottle cover, this little hot water bottle with this really ugly acrylic knitted cover. You know, it is a cute knit cable design, but it's acrylic, it feels horrible, I hate it. So I would like to make one for this, and I would like to make another full size one as a gift for my mother, because I think she would really like it. She uses hot water bottles a lot because her body runs very cold. I think hot water bottles do get used a lot in this country. And if you live here and you don't use one, you should, because they really do keep you warm and it means you don't have to have the heating on so much. Which last year was quite useful because heating got so expensive. But yeah, so I think I'll definitely make one of those when I'm feeling a bit more creatively, like, because it does require a bit of thinking. If you wanted to make one, because there wasn't a pattern, I'm aware somebody might ask. I traced the shape of my hot water bottle. I then folded it in half so that it was a mirror image, because probably my drawing wasn't even. I then sliced, I did that twice. Oh no, so I cut it down the middle. Hold on. Drew around my hot water bottle cover. I then folded that in half down the middle, and I cut it out so that it was exactly even. I then did cut it in half down the middle, so I had 2 pieces. I then cut it sort of a third of the way down. I then added seam allowances around, because obviously it's half down the middle, around the outside. And then around the outside on the 2 pieces I'd cut in half, and then where the cut was. I then, is that right? I then cut all that out in yellow and the lining colours and the wadding. So this is me trying to rethink my process. I made the patched panel following a sawtooth quilt block tutorial. I appliqued that onto the front piece, which was lining, wadding, yellow, and did like a bit of hand quilting into it, which you can't really see because it's on the seams. I then did it so that these edges weren't raw. So I had the lining and the wadding and the outside fabric, right sides together, stitched the edges, turned them over, pressed it, and then did a running stitch, like a decorative running stitch, across the top and bottom pieces. I then laid one on top of the other and put that right side up on the table, and then got the front and put that right side down on top of it. And then I sewed around the edge and then put bias binding, as you can see, over that seam, and then I turned it the right way out, which was a bit of a struggle. I remember that being a bit of a struggle because I should have done a bit more seam allowance because this is very tight. And that is how I made my hot water bottle cover. So maybe that would give you guys a bit of an inspiration to have a go at doing the same. Depending on when this video goes up and whether or not I have made the other one, maybe I will film some of me doing it, but probably not, because I don't think I'm going to make that till closer to Christmas, and I probably won't wait that long to put this video up. But you know, if you're not sure, ask me some questions and hopefully I'll better answer. And the other thing I've been doing, I am going to be doing a craft fair locally at work in the lead up to Christmas. I do it most years. And last year candles were really popular, so I'm making a lot more candles. So I've been making a lot of those. I've got some curing downstairs as we speak. I'm filming this in a break between batches because I've got to get solid enough for me to move them, so I have space to make the next batch. And something else that I had a go at making, or I am making at the moment, and I think I put some footage in at the start, I picked and dried some flowers and herbs at the end of summer. Yarrow, chamomile, calendula, all grown locally, some by me, some not, and dried it. And I infused it in a combination of grapeseed and coconut oil because that's what I had. When I was making soap last year, I accidentally mixed those thinking it was coconut and olive oil or something else. And just as I was about to add it to the soap, I realised it wasn't, it was grapeseed, therefore not what I needed. And I didn't know what that would do to the soap. So I poured it into a jar and left it. So I thought I'd use it for this because I just have it and it's already mixed. So I infused it in the slow cooker with the dried herbs, and I've just combined some with some beeswax and shea butter and a bit of lavender oil, essential oil, to make like a balm or a salve. And I'm going to make some more into an actual hand cream with some emulsifier and water to make it more creamy because I'm hoping it'll be quite soothing on the skin in the winter. So I don't know that I'm going to, I've got quite a big jar of the oil, which you might have seen in one of those clips. I've only used a little bit of it, and I'll just keep making it as I need it because of the shelf life. I think it will last longer as an oil rather than combined with other things. But I do have a preservative that I've bought for my hand creams, which I can put in when I do make the cream. But yeah, so if you're interested in skincare making, I've mentioned this before, but I bought the book Bottega Zero Waste by Marta something, and I'll put the details to that below. And I really recommend that book because some really good beginner friendly recipes in there for hand cream, for balms, solid shampoo, and lots of things, and I use quite a lot of them. Yeah, she's really good and a good person to follow on Instagram as well. So yeah, that's kind of my autumn non-knitting plans. I mean, there will be other things that I get up to, like baking and, you know, preserving things and things like that, but I thought that's what I'd share with you today. So hopefully that's interesting. If you like these non-knitting videos, do let me know because I don't know how popular they are. And yeah, hopefully chat soon. Bye.